Rhonda spent nearly 2 hours in front of the mirror that afternoon. She wasn't usually this meticulous. In recent years, her life had settled into a quiet rhythm: work, simple dinners, and the occasional short phone call with her son. But today was different. Today was Damon's wedding. Her son, the boy she had raised on her own after her husband passed away. The one she poured everything into: her time, her energy, her savings, and years of her life. And now he was stepping into a new chapter. A chapter where, if things had gone the way she once imagined, she would still have a place. The navy blue dress fit her just right. Elegant, but not flashy. Rhonda had tried on several before choosing this one, telling herself she didn't need to stand out. She just needed to show up as the groom's mother, graceful, composed, and proud. In her hand, she carried a small, carefully wrapped gift. Inside was a vintage watch that had once belonged to Damon's father. She planned to give it to him after the ceremony, a quiet way to connect the past with his future. When Rhonda stepped into the venue, she was met with soft music and the warm hum of conversation. Golden lights reflected off beautifully arranged tables. Everything looked picture-perfect, like something straight out of a magazine. She allowed herself a small smile. My son made it, she thought. He built a good life. But that feeling didn't last long. Rhonda stood in front of the seating chart, her eyes scanning line after line of neatly printed names. She searched for her own, Rhonda Hayes, with quiet confidence. And then to pause. Her name wasn't there. She frowned slightly, thinking she might have missed it. She started over, this time reading more carefully. Guests were organized by tables: friends of the bride, Damon's co-workers, extended family from both sides. Still nothing. Her name was nowhere on the list. A small knot tightened in her chest. Maybe it's a printing mistake, she told herself. Or maybe they gave me a special seat. She stepped aside, trying to stay calm, her eyes now searching the room for Damon. But instead, a familiar voice came from behind her. Oh, you made it. Rhonda turned around. Indy stood there in her white wedding dress, looking flawless, almost too flawless. Her smile was perfect, but there was something cold underneath it. Her eyes quickly scanned Rhonda from head to toe, as if silently judging. Indy, Rhonda said gently, keeping her tone polite. I was just looking for my seat, but I don't see my name on the chart. A brief silence. Then Indy laughed. Oh, right, she said casually. We made a special arrangement for you. A special seat. Rhonda hesitated. A special seat? Yeah, Indy nodded, her smile widening slightly. So, you can see everything from a different perspective. Something about the way she said it made Rhonda uneasy. But before she could ask more, Indy turned and gestured. Come with me. Rhonda paused for a second, then followed. The sound of Indy's heels echoed against the floor as she led the way past beautifully decorated tables, past guests who barely glanced in their direction. The farther they walked, the more uneasy Rhonda felt. They didn't stop near the front. Not at the family tables. Not anywhere that made sense. Instead, Indy kept walking toward the back, where the lighting was dimmer and fewer people paid attention. And then they stopped. Rhonda looked down. A folding chair, placed off to the side. Next to it, a large black trash can, the lid slightly open.
No tablecloth. No flowers.
No name card. Just the chair. And the trash can. For a few seconds, Rhonda couldn't speak. There, Indy said, as if presenting something completely normal. That's your seat. Rhonda blinked. I'm sorry, what? Indy tilted her head, her tone dripping with mock innocence. Oh, come on. Don't be so serious. It's just a little joke. A joke. Rhonda repeated, her voice unsteady. Yeah, Indy smiled. Every wedding needs a little humor, right? Rhonda glanced around. No one else was nearby. No one was laughing. No one thought this was a joke. Indy, I think. Rhonda started, but her voice caught in her throat. What's going on? Damon's voice. Rhonda turned quickly, relief flashing across her face. Her son stood there in his suit, looking every bit like the perfect groom. Damon, she said, her voice softening. I think there's been some kind of mistake with my seat. Oh, that. Damon cut in, glancing at the chair before letting out a laugh. A real laugh.
Not awkward.
Not forced.
Genuine.
Mom, he said, lightly patting her shoulder. Don't be so sensitive. Indy's just joking. Don't be so sensitive. The words hit harder than anything else. Rhonda looked into her son's eyes, searching for something, anything, that would tell her this was all a misunderstanding. There was nothing. Just indifference. Just quiet agreement. You don't think this is a bit much? She asked softly. Damon sighed, a hint of impatience crossing his face. Mom, it's a happy day. Don't make it a big deal.
Just sit here for now, okay?
It's not like it matters. Just sit here. Right here. Next to the trash can. Rhonda felt her throat tighten. The noise around her seemed to fade, replaced by the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She could leave. She could turn around, walk out, and hold on to what little dignity she had left. But then she looked at Damon. She thought about today.
About everything it meant. About all the years behind them.
And slowly she sat down. The chair was cold and stiff. A large potted plant blocked part of her view. The trash can beside her carried a faint, unpleasant smell. From where she sat, she could still see the stage, but only partially. The bride and groom stood at the center, glowing under the lights. And Rhonda, she was in the back, like a stranger. The music started. Guests stood, clapping, smiling, celebrating. Rhonda stayed still. Her hands tightened around the small gift box in her lap, the wrapping paper slightly crumpling under her grip. Her eyes never left Damon, her son, the man who had just laughed while his mother was seated next to a trash can. A dull ache spread through her chest, not sharp, but deep and lingering. It wasn't just about the chair. It wasn't just about the joke.
It was about what it meant.
The truth she was only beginning to understand. That in Damon's new world, she was no longer at the center. Maybe she never truly was. Rhonda took a slow, steady breath, holding back the tears. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of
them.
But deep inside, something had shifted.
Quietly.
And permanently. The music swelled, and the ceremony moved forward as if nothing had happened. From her seat in the back, half hidden behind a decorative plant and uncomfortably close to the trash can, Rhonda watched every moment. She watched Damon smile. She watched Indy hold his hand, her expression soft and convincing. She watched the guests wipe away tears, completely absorbed in what looked like a perfect love story. And for the first time that day, Rhonda stopped focusing on the humiliation. She started thinking, because something about all of this didn't add up. Her eyes shifted toward the small table near the front where baby Marcus sat in a high chair, watched over by a family friend. Marcus, her grandson, the child she had loved without question from the moment she first held him. He giggled, waving his tiny hands as people passed by, completely unaware of the tension that had quietly taken root in the room. Rhonda's gaze lingered on him longer than before. 7 months. That number surfaced in her mind suddenly, uninvited, but persistent. Marcus had been born just 7 months after Indy and Damon met. At the time, no one questioned it. Indy had explained it away quickly, calling it a slightly early birth. Damon had accepted it without hesitation, and Rhonda had chosen not to push. But now, sitting there in silence, removed from the warmth of the celebration, the timeline began to replay in her mind. 7 months. Her expression slowly tightened. Marcus hadn't looked like a premature baby. Not even close. He had weighed 8 pounds at birth. A full, healthy weight. Rhonda remembered the moment clearly, how the nurse had even joked about it. That's a strong baby for being early, she had said. At the time, Rhonda smiled along. Now that memory felt different. He hadn't been small. He hadn't been fragile. There had been no signs of a baby born early. Rhonda's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of her chair. Her eyes returned to Marcus. And then another detail surfaced. His eyes. Dark brown. Deep and unmistakable. Rhonda blinked slowly. Damon had blue eyes. Indy's eyes were green. Neither of them had anything close to that shade. At the time, people had laughed it off. Maybe it'll change, they said. Baby's eyes can shift. Rhonda had nodded. But Marcus was no longer a newborn. And his eyes hadn't changed. Not even slightly. A quiet unease settled deeper into her chest. This wasn't just coincidence. It couldn't be. The ceremony continued, but Rhonda barely registered the vows. Instead, her mind moved backward, rewinding, searching, looking for anything she might have missed. And then she found it. A memory she hadn't thought about in months. A phone call. It had happened late one evening, not long after Indy started seeing Damon. Rhonda had stopped by their apartment unexpectedly, bringing over food. The door hadn't been fully closed. And inside, Indy had been on the phone. Her voice was low, but tense. "No, you don't understand," Indy had said. "I told you it's over. You can't call me anymore." A pause. Then, sharper this time, "I'm serious, Connor. Don't make this harder than it already is." Connor. The name hit Rhonda again, clearer now. At the time, she hadn't asked questions. Everyone has a past. But now, sitting in the shadows of her own son's wedding, that moment felt different. Important. Connected. Rhonda's breathing slowed as the pieces began to align. The timeline. The weight. The eyes. The phone call. Individually, each detail could be dismissed. Together, they formed something else. Something that didn't sit right. Something that demanded answers. Across the room, Damon slipped a ring onto Indy's finger. Applause erupted. Everyone stood. Everyone celebrated. Everyone believed. But Rhonda remained seated. Still. Quiet. Watching. And in that moment, a decision formed. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. But out of clarity. She would not be dismissed. She would not be made small. And she would not ignore what her instincts were telling her. If there was nothing to hide, then the truth would prove it. And if there was something more beneath the surface, she would find it, no matter how long it took. Rhonda exhaled slowly, her posture straightening just slightly in the uncomfortable chair. The humiliation was still there, but it had shifted. It was no longer just pain. It was fuel. For the first time that day, she stopped feeling like the victim and started becoming something else entirely. Someone who was paying attention. Someone who was asking questions. Someone who was ready to uncover the truth. The quiet investigation, the wedding, ended the way everyone expected it to. Laughter. Photos. Champagne glasses clinking under soft golden lights. From the outside, it was perfect. But Rhonda didn't stay long after the ceremony. She gave Damon a brief hug. She told him, "I'm proud of you." And she left. No scene.
No confrontation.
No emotion on display. But inside, something had already shifted. That night, Rhonda didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, replaying every detail again and again. The timeline, the weight, the eyes, the name, Connor. By morning, she had made up her mind. If the truth existed, she was going to find it. Not guess. Not assume. Find it. A week later, Rhonda sat across from a woman named Margaret Chen, a private investigator, mid-50s.
Calm. Precise.
The kind of person who didn't waste words. "You're not the first mother to walk in here with a feeling," Margaret said, folding her hands on the table. Rhonda held her gaze. "I don't want feelings," she replied. "I want facts." Margaret gave a small nod. "Then we start with the past." Rhonda slid a piece of paper across the table.
A name. Indy.
And underneath it, another name. Connor. "I need to know who he is," Rhonda said. "And what really happened before she met my son." Margaret picked up the paper, glanced at it once, then stood. "I'll be in touch." Days passed. Then a week. Rhonda didn't call Damon. Damon didn't call her. Silence settled between them like something unspoken. Then, finally, the call came.
"Come in," Margaret said.
Rhonda arrived within the hour. This time, Margaret didn't waste any time. She placed a thin file on the desk and opened it. "Connor Walsh," she began. "Portland, Oregon." Rhonda leaned forward slightly. "They lived together," Margaret continued. About a year. Neighbors confirm it. Shared lease. Shared bills. Rhonda's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly in her lap. And then, Margaret turned a page. She left suddenly. How suddenly? No notice. Packed up and gone within a few days. Rhonda's voice lowered. Why? Margaret looked at her. Timing lines up with early pregnancy. Silence.
Heavy. Controlled.
Rhonda exhaled slowly. So she didn't just have a past, she said. She ran from it. Margaret didn't respond.
She didn't need to.
The files said enough. Rhonda closed her eyes for a brief moment. Not in shock. In confirmation. The pieces were no longer loose.
They were forming a pattern.
But one thing was still missing.
Proof.
Something undeniable. Something no one could argue with. Rhonda opened her eyes again. I need one more thing, she said. Margaret already knew.
DNA, she replied.
Rhonda nodded once.
How?
Margaret leaned back slightly. Not complicated, she said. You just need a clean sample. Rhonda's mind moved quickly, a plan forming almost instantly, because she knew exactly how to get close. 2 days later, Rhonda stood in her kitchen again, but this time she was cooking. Dough spread across the counter, carefully rolled, precisely cut. Cinnamon rolls. Damon's favorite. The same recipe she had made for him since he was a child.
Familiar.
Comforting. Safe. By the time she arrived at their house, the smell still lingered faintly from the container. Indy opened the door, surprised but not resistant. Oh, hi, Indy said. Rhonda offered a small, controlled smile. I thought I'd stop by, she said. For Marcus. A pause. Then Indy stepped aside.
Come in.
The house was quiet. Damon wasn't home.
Perfect.
Marcus sat in his high chair, tapping his hands against the tray. The moment he saw Rhonda, his face lit up.
Second.
Then nodded. Sure. Rhonda stepped forward, picking up the small spoon from the tray. Applesauce. Simple. Routine. She fed Marcus slowly, gently. One bite, then another, all while keeping her movements steady. Unremarkable. Until the moment came. Marcus grabbed the spoon with his tiny hand, bringing it to his mouth. Saliva coating the edge. Rhonda didn't react. Didn't rush. She just waited. Then calmly took the spoon back. Here, let me help you, she said softly. And in one smooth motion she swapped it. The used spoon slipped into her sleeve. A clean one replaced it instantly.
No hesitation. No noise.
No attention. Marcus kept eating. Indy didn't notice. Nothing changed on the surface, but everything had changed underneath. A few minutes later, Rhonda stood up. I should go, she said. Indy nodded, distracted.
Yeah.
Okay. Rhonda walked to the door, her posture steady, her expression neutral. But inside her pocket, sealed in a small plastic bag, was the answer she had been looking for. Or, at least, the beginning of it. As she stepped outside, the air felt different. Sharper.
Clearer.
This was no longer suspicion. No longer intuition. This was action. And soon, very soon, the truth would no longer be hidden. The results came back in a sealed envelope.
No explanation. No emotion.
Just facts. Rhonda didn't open it right away. She already knew what she would find. Or, at least she thought she did. Instead, she placed it on the table and stared at it for a long time. Because once she opened it, there was no going back. And once the truth was spoken out loud, nothing in her son's life would ever be the same again. 3 days later, the family gathered to celebrate Marcus. His first steps. A small milestone. A quiet party. Close friends. A few relatives. Laughter filled the house. Balloons lined the walls. A banner stretched across the living room. Everything felt warm. Normal. Controlled. Exactly the kind of setting where no one expected anything to go wrong. Rhonda arrived on time. Dressed simply this time. No effort to impress. No need to prove anything. She carried no gift. Only her purse. And inside it, the envelope. Damon greeted her at the door.
Hey.
Little surprised, but polite. Hey.
Mom, he said.
Rhonda nodded.
Eat.
There was a pause. Something unspoken between them, but neither of them addressed it. Indy appeared moments later, holding Marcus. Her smile was practiced, carefully measured. "Glad you could make it," she said. Rhonda looked at her.
Calm.
Steady. "I wouldn't miss it." And she meant that, because today mattered.
More than any of them realized.
The party went on. People talked. Music played softly in the background. Phones came out to record every moment. And then it happened. Marcus stood up.
Wobbly.
Uncertain. Tiny hands reaching forward. One step. Then another. The room erupted.
Cheers.
"No," she said calmly. "It's not." Damon shook his head.
No.
"That's not possible." Rhonda held out the paper. "Read it." He didn't take it. Didn't move.
Didn't want to.
Because part of him already knew. Indy's voice rose. "You went behind our backs? You tested a baby without permission?" Rhonda didn't flinch. "I looked for the truth," she said. "Something you should have told him." "Stop," Indy said quickly. "Just stop talking." But Rhonda wasn't finished. She reached into her purse again. And this time, she pulled out a photograph.
A man.
Mid-30s. Dark hair. Brown eyes. The resemblance wasn't subtle. She held it up. "This is Connor Walsh." Indy froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. Rhonda continued. "You lived with him in Portland. You left when you found out you were pregnant." Damon's breathing changed. Slow. Uneven. He looked at Indy. Waiting.
Hoping.
"Tell me she's lying," he said. Indy didn't answer. Didn't move. Didn't even try. And that silence said everything.
No, dame un whisper.
Rhonda didn't raise her voice. Didn't push. She just stood there, holding the truth in her hands. Indy's composure cracked. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said quickly. "I was going to tell you." "When?" Damon cut in. No anger yet. Just disbelief. "When exactly?" Indy shook her head. "I didn't know how," she said. "You had everything. Stability. A future." You lied," Damon said. Now it was there.
The shift. The break.
"You let me believe he was mine." Indy's voice dropped. "I needed a way out," she said. "Connor had nothing. You did." The room reacted. Whispers.
Shock.
People stepping back. Because now, it wasn't just a private moment. It was public. Unavoidable.
Real.
Damon looked at Marcus. The child he had held.
Loved. Claimed.
Then back at Indy. And something inside him gave way. Rhonda watched it happen. Not with satisfaction. Not with victory. But with clarity. Because this was the cost of truth. It didn't just expose lies. It broke illusions. And once broken, they could never be put back the same way again. No one spoke. No one moved. Until finally Damon stepped back. Away from Indy. Away from everything.
And in that
moment, the life they had built together
collapsed.
The room didn't recover from that moment. It couldn't. What had just happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a small argument that could be brushed off or laughed away. It was the kind of truth that changes everything. Permanently. No one spoke at first. The music had stopped at some point, though no one remembered when. The balloons still hung in place, the decorations untouched, but the atmosphere had completely shifted. Damon stood there, frozen. Not angry. Not shouting. Just still. Like his mind hadn't caught up with reality yet. Indy, on the other hand, was unraveling. "You don't understand," she said quickly, her voice shaky now. "It wasn't that simple. I didn't plan it like that. Stop." Damon's voice cut through the room. Quiet, but firm. Indy froze. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Damon ran a hand through his hair, pacing once, then twice, like he was trying to wake himself up from something unreal. "You let me believe he was mine," he said again, slower this time. Each word heavier than the last. Indy swallowed. "I was going to tell you," she repeated weakly. Damon let out a short, hollow laugh. "When?" he asked. "After 10 years? After we had another kid? When exactly were you planning to tell me that my entire life was built on a lie?" Indy didn't answer. Because there was no answer that could fix this. Across the room, Marcus started to fuss, confused by the sudden tension. The same child who had just taken his first steps, celebrated, cheered for, was now at the center of something he couldn't possibly understand. Damon looked at him, and that was the hardest part. Not the betrayal, not the lies, but that moment. Because whatever the truth was, his feelings for Marcus had been real. That didn't just disappear. Rhonda watched her son carefully. She didn't interrupt, didn't step in. This wasn't her moment anymore. This was his. Damon walked slowly toward Marcus, his expression conflicted, his movements hesitant. He reached out, instinctively like he always had. But this time he stopped halfway. His hand hovered in the air for a second, then dropped. A small gesture, but it said everything. Indy noticed, and panic set in. "Don't do that," she said quickly, stepping closer. "Don't punish him for this. He didn't do anything wrong." Damon looked at her, and for the first time, there was anger. Sharp, controlled. "But you did." Silence. Heavy. Final. Rhonda exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everything settle into place. This was the fallout. This was what truth looked like when it finally surfaced. It wasn't clean. It wasn't satisfying. It was complicated, messy, and painful. "I'm done," Damon said. Simple. Clear. Indy shook her head immediately. "No. No, you can't just—" "I'm done," he repeated. No raised voice. No dramatic gesture. Just certainty. And that was worse, because it meant he had already decided. The room began to shift again, guests quietly stepping away, avoiding eye contact, whispering under their breath. What had started as a celebration had turned into something no one wanted to be part of. Indy stood there, alone in the center of it. Her control was gone. Her story was exposed. And there was nothing left to hold on to. Days later, everything moved quickly. Damon filed for an annulment. There was no fight. No drawn-out battle. Because the truth was undeniable. Connor Walsh was contacted. And this time he showed up. Not dramatically. Not aggressively. But present. Willing. Ready to take responsibility for the child he didn't even know he had. The situation wasn't simple. It never would be. But for the first time it was honest. Damon made a choice that surprised everyone. He didn't walk away from Marcus completely. He couldn't. Not after everything. Instead, he worked out a quiet, respectful agreement with Connor. Not as a father, but as someone who still cared. Someone who had been there from the beginning, even if the truth said otherwise. It wasn't perfect, but it was human. Indy, on the other hand, had nowhere left to go. Her reputation collapsed almost overnight. Friends distanced themselves. Trust was gone. She moved back in with her parents, facing consequences she could no longer avoid, not just emotionally, but legally as well. And Rhonda, for the first time in a long time, felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because everything had worked out. It hadn't. Not in the way anyone would have wanted. But because the truth was no longer hidden. And that changed everything. One evening, Damon came to visit her. No phone call. No warning. Just a knock on the door. Rhonda opened it. And for a moment, they just looked at each other. No tensión. No distance. Just understanding. "I should have listened to you," Damon said. Rhonda shook her head gently. "No," she replied. "You had to see it for yourself." He nodded. They sat down together, the silence between them no longer heavy. Just quiet. Familiar. "I'm sorry," he said after a while. "For the wedding. For everything." Rhonda looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the man he had become, but the boy she had raised. "It hurt," she said honestly. Then softer. "But we're still here." Damon let out a slow breath. And for the first time since everything happened, he smiled. Not the kind of smile people give in public, but a real one. Small, but genuine. And in that moment, something began to heal. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't just break things. Sometimes, it frees you from what was never real to begin with. Rhonda learned that the hard way, but she learned it fully. And if there's one question left after everything you've just heard, it's this. What would you do? If you were in her position, would you stay silent? Or would you risk everything to uncover the truth? Let me know in the comments below.